Hi, everyone, and thank you for tuning in today. My name's Seth Gerson, and I'm Program Director for K-12 Education here at the National Governors Association. Welcome to our conversation today with David Donaldson of the National Center for Grow Your Own. Please note that this recording is the latest in NGA state snapshots for strengthening the educator workforce webinar series. Please check out our earlier webinars in this ongoing series, including with Dr. Jason Grissom, Dr. Linda Darling-Hammond, Dr. Constance Lindsay, Dr. Paul Manna, and Dr. Steve Tozer. These webinars are supported by and in partnership with the Wallace Foundation. The Wallace Foundation works to support principal and school leader preparation, development, and support across the country. Their resources, reports, and research on state strategies for school leadership can be found at wallacefoundation.org or through a direct link on the NGA K-12 webpage. Today, I'm honored to engage in a conversation with David Donaldson. David is the founder and managing partner of the National Center for Grow Your Own. Previously, David served as the Chief of Human Capital at the Tennessee Department of Education, where, among other notable efforts, he led the creation of Tennessee's statewide Grow Your Own program. He's also been a teacher, principal, and administrator. So welcome, David, and thanks so much for joining us. If we could just start by, if you could share a little bit of background on the National Center for Grow Your Own and some of the central characteristics of a Grow Your Own program for teachers and principals.
Yeah, sure. So first off, thanks, Seth, for having me. National Governors Association, it just continues to do incredible work, and it's a privilege to be here today. And also thanks to the Wallace Foundation. I love the work they're doing in the principal pipeline space. And so as far as the National Center for Grow Your Own, we are a 501c3 nonprofit. We have the privilege of supporting states, districts, and educator preparation providers to launch or expand high quality, grow your own, and or registered apprenticeships for both teachers and principals. As you mentioned, I used to be with the Tennessee Department of Education, and so our work at the National Center spun out of that work in Tennessee. And so have the privilege of working with some of my former coworkers from the department as we support folks across the country. But regarding grow your own programs, if you ask 100 different school districts, you tend to get 100 different definitions of what a grow your own program is. So we like to say that it is a clear, articulated pathway for an aspiring educator to become a teacher for free and get paid to do so. And if you notice in our definition, we don't put an age on there. We could be talking about someone who's 15, 25, 35, 45, 55, or 65 years old. And we don't put an educational background on there. It could be somebody who already has a bachelor's, an associate's, or no college at all. The key here is we believe school districts should be able to select individuals who have a heart for kids. Universities can train someone to teach special ed. They can train someone to teach math. You can't train somebody to have a heart for kids. And so we want our school districts to be able to select that cafeteria worker, that bus driver, that paraprofessional, that parent, that guardian, that tutor, you name it, that high school senior, and say, have you ever thought about being a teacher? And remove those financial barriers for them. On a similar note, when it comes to principals, what we learned in our work in the past in Tennessee, and as a former principal myself in Detroit public schools, superintendents would say to me all the time, David, look, every time I have a principal opening, I have the same 15, 20 people, all who have the principal certificate in hand, who want the job. Don't you think I would have hired one of them by now if I wanted to? Who I want is the third grade teacher who's been here for 12 years, who has the respect of her peers. She's the grade level chair. But because in many cases, teachers aren't paid enough, she's still paying off her student loans from getting her bachelor's degree, that she's not willing to take out more loans to get her master's in school leadership. Therefore, we created a program in Tennessee, and now we'll talk later, I believe, about registered apprenticeship for principals that also removes those financial barriers so that superintendents can hand select those all-star teachers who are interested in moving to that next level. And again, for both of these teachers and principals, it removes that financial barrier to get that degree.
Thanks, David. And so a clear articulated pathway, removing that financial barrier. And then you said, making sure at the center of that is when you're recruiting for this pathway, that the individual has a heart for kids. So can you talk a little bit about just how you've seen districts sort of look for some of those attributes over time? Like,
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm going to answer it two ways. One's personal. So my mom, and before we recorded, I was talking about my mom to you all. My mom was actually my school cafeteria worker, but she also taught Sunday school and vacation Bible school for over 2 decades. She was not able to afford to go to college. And yet my father is a West Point alum. And so if we believe teaching and military are both forms of public service, then where's the equivalent of like a GI Bill for those who want to be a teacher? That's the first thing I want to say. The second thing, as far as what it actually looks like in practice, and frankly, your actual question, but I shout out to my mom and my dad, is that what we have seen, and this isn't even about education, what I'm about to say. I believe this is just about life. Too many people suffer from low self-esteem. And so what we have seen work really well is the tap of having principals or current teachers go up to that paraprofessional and say, hey, you're amazing with kids. Have you ever thought about being a teacher? And the reason I bring up the low self-esteem is more or too often a response is, who, me? It's almost as if people count themselves out before they start. And the reason I bring this up is most folks think, let's send out an application, let's send out a survey. And you will get folks to sign up for that. And we've had really positive results. That survey being, do you want to be a teacher? Do you want to be a teacher in these certification areas we've identified? And then what's your college background? So then we know where to what university partner to match you up with. But I think we got to go that extra step, that tap. And it applies also to our high school students. When you see a student with leadership potential, more often than not, we say, hey, have you ever thought about being a doctor or an attorney? What we need, or a governor, right? What we want to say here is, have you ever thought about being a teacher, a doctor, or attorney? We got to put the teaching profession at that same level as other occupations and professions we determine are filled by leaders.
the talents there in the community, but making sure that that's the connection is happening, the awareness is happening, and that the elevation of the profession that draws people to it and makes it more attractive. It's really helpful, David. Know that you're currently working in 20 states and growing right now. Can you just give us a sense across the 20 and where you're working, what you're seeing as sort of the overall challenges and opportunities in educator recruitment and retention across the country?
Yeah, so I think there's some people who want to debate whether there really is a teacher shortage. That's not something that I really get involved in. I think, and the reason I say that is because when you talk to actual school districts in these 20 plus states we're in, they're not getting the quantity, let alone quality of applications. There used to be that day and age, and it wasn't that long ago when you had an elementary school opening, a teacher opening, you'd have 30, 50 applications for one vacancy. That doesn't exist anymore. And in many cases, you're lucky to get one or two applications. And even with that, these principals, these district HR folks are not very happy with the quality that they're seeing, right? At the same time, nationally, we are seeing a surge in, and it's called different things in different states, but basically emergency certifications, people being put on temporary licenses. And oftentimes that's somebody who hasn't gone through any training, right? And so those things concern me. And I think, unfortunately, and this is really important for governors and state education departments to support their school districts with ESSER funds going away this fall, extensions aside. I'm not going to get into that, but we are going to see certain school districts lay off teachers, right? They may have added additional personnel during COVID to help reduce class size and for other reasons. And yet these layoffs are often not going to correlate with what the vacancies are in. Districts are not going to be laying off special ed teachers or math teachers. And so I think that's going to be tough, though, to communicate. And I do have concerns about that. And we're, in the states that we support, of how do you justify laying off teachers while saying we still need to hire other ones. It's not a, if you're a math teacher, doesn't mean you're eligible to teach Spanish, right? So, but I think that can be tough from a communications challenge, and is something that I really think we want to think through as we go into, as tough decisions are made with changing of budgets, and also due to changes in enrollment of students.
I know it may be external to just the role you have at National Center for Grow Your Own, but have you been advising on sort of how to prioritize that with districts, how to think about the sustainability? What kind of advice have you given to them in that regard? Or if you could put on your hat when you were with Tennessee Department of Education, how would you, sort of advise and guide them right now as they're making some of these hard decisions?
Yeah, I mean, I think we got to keep kids at the focus, right? Like, if there's a teacher vacancy, means a kid does not have the teacher they need or deserve. And so when you say this student has these needs, this student needs math. This student, maybe they have a individualized education plan, an IEP. They need a special education teacher. I think we got to always center it around our students. That's why we're all here in this work. So I think that is very important. Second, I think, one thing I appreciate you brought up the Tennessee. One thing when we first launched Grow Your Own, we needed to think about, hey, if we're saying you can become a teacher for free, we were concerned about, would we get pushback or feedback from somebody who did pay to become a teacher, and they did it in the last 5 years, and they have student loans. But just because something wasn't fair to you doesn't mean it needs to maintain or stay unfair to everyone else, right? And so if we learn to do something a better way, let's change it, right? So there's that. Second, there is public service loan forgiveness, and let's make sure we're connecting you with those opportunities as well. So I think that was two approaches. And then third, we made sure to offer opportunities for our current teachers. So we had Grow Your Own opportunities that led to adding additional endorsements for free. If you had been teaching for a while and you wanted to add special education, English as a second language, math, or as we talked earlier about the principal work, or if you wanted to get your master's in school leadership. So we made sure that there was opportunities no matter who you were. A quick aside that's actually really amazing. The current National Teacher of the Year, Missy Testerman, taught about 28 or 29 years, then did our Grow Your Own program. She added an additional endorsement in English as a second language and is now the National Teacher of the Year. Pretty awesome to see. And so that's a great example of ways to think about what are you offering for all the different all the educators, regardless of experience level, and how you communicate those opportunities is key.
Thanks, David. Really helpful guidance and advice there. You mentioned apprenticeship earlier, registered apprenticeship. I know, again, part of the efforts that you're working on at the National Center. You have 39 states participating in the National Registered Apprenticeship and Teaching Network. If you could share a little bit about the network and how it's changed over time, and how you're engaging both departments of education and departments of labor in states.
Yeah. So, when I worked in a state, I wanted to hear what my colleagues were doing in other states, right? That's who I could trust. I knew they were walking a mile in the same shoes I was. And so we built the National Registered Apprenticeship and Teaching Network. In August of 2022, we launched with 7 states. And as you shared, and we're very blessed, we now have 39 states in that network, because states listen to other states. All of these meetings are off the record so that they can ask each other the tough questions. Why did you choose to go that way? Or frankly, I'm struggling with this. What would you do if you were me? When I'm the first one to say that the first question I ever asked when I heard about this work is, what is a registered apprenticeship? You can't necessarily ask that in your current role now, and so now this is a chance for folks just to say, hey, some of you are in farther places in this work than others. What are the lessons learned? What can you tell me to avoid? So I think that's really important in this work. I think the other thing that we have seen is, with all of this investment in teacher apprenticeships, we're seeing that growth into principal apprenticeships. because if I'm going to spend taxpayer money, which I need to be a good steward of on teachers via grow your own or registered apprenticeships, I got to retain them. And so that has been key to this work, because why does anyone leave any job? The number one reason is because of who you work for. So we're seeing that development take place in states exchanging ideas in the principal apprenticeship space. So I think that is key to this work. And I think to your last part, I think NGA is a perfect example of an organization that has displayed leadership in breaking down of silos. As you support governors oversee, health and human services, let alone education, let alone, all sorts of departments. And so for us, we've seen that education and labor, which I couldn't even tell you who the labor person was, in Tennessee 3 years ago or 4 years ago, whatever it was. And so see that lessons learned from one another, frankly, is the National Center for Grow Your Own. Our main thing we've done to date is we play the role of translator, but now by bringing folks together, they're building a common language and better understanding one another. I have the utmost respect for state departments of labor, workforce development. It's incredible the work they do. And if you think about it, I don't know the first thing about cybersecurity, welding, plumbing, culinary arts. I can't cook to save my life. I only have to know teaching. And so they have a wealth of knowledge from all these different things. And it's really neat to see that information and resource exchange between education and labor folks through this network. A lot of states bring both their ed departments and labor departments to this, and that's pretty neat to see.
Yeah, it's so great to hear, and how you've been able to bring together those different agencies to do this work together. It all starts with those conversations and being able to bring them together to connect with each other, and then start sharing the knowledge and grow from there. So great to hear. And as we've talked about sort of grow your own programs, registered apprenticeships, we know your work in Tennessee. Are there other states you would highlight that are making significant efforts in these two areas that you'd want to elevate, not to the extension of others, but just, so in the terms of sharing for governor's offices, so they have other exemplars?
Yeah, man, I am, this is tough. I feel like this is like winning an Oscar and you have 30 seconds to say, like, there's so many people doing awesome work. So the first way I'm going to answer this is say, we actually have a national convening in January of 2025 where several states will be presenting. So, and we'd love for National Governors Association to present there if you're interested. So that's first things first. But North Dakota, I love what North Dakota is doing. The Department of Public Instruction, Virginia Department of Ed. Florida is doing really cool work. Alaska is doing awesome work. Connecticut. And so I want to be clear, this is bipartisan. This is red, blue states. It's looking like different things in different places. Delaware has done awesome work. And there's so many more, like no matter what, I'm leaving, folks off here. So I feel really, really bad. But I've just been really, really impressed by a lot of people. The theme, West Virginia, creating the first youth apprenticeship for K-12 teaching. And so what's cool about this is I always say, like, I've made more mistakes than anybody. So please, like, take I have the most lessons learned because of that. But what's so interesting is even at our conference last year, to see the innovation and to see where people are taking this, that's what excites me in this space. And I could go into more detail about why each state I mentioned. And I would in Nebraska, they're getting into some competency-based educate with how they're doing their registered apprentice. Like, there's some really, really cool stuff out there. And then there's so much stuff in the works. Arkansas has been doing awesome work in this space. Hawaii has some really cool things in the work. So yeah, Seth, this could be a whole, like, this question could have been the whole hour if we wanted it to be. You're getting me about to nerd out. So I'm going to stop. But if you have follow up, I'd be happy to answer any about why I said some of those states.
Yeah, well, I think what you're speaking to though is the bipartisan, interest and momentum around this, and how quickly it's even grown from 7 to 39 in the network, and this sharing, I'm sure, contributing to being able to enlarge that and expand that work. We also
Absolutely.
saw that you have a partnership with Department of Labor, U.S. Department of Labor, registered apprenticeships for K-12 principals.
Mhm.
So love to hear a little bit more about that program, and how you see that as growing high quality, diverse leadership across the country.
Yeah, so actually, this allows me to brag about one state in particular. So that's North Dakota. So State Superintendent Kirsten Baszler, and Assistant State Superintendent Lori Matsky, we had worked together on a teacher apprenticeship, and then we're like, wait, why can't we do this for principals? And so in July of 2023, we were in partnership with several other organizations like the National Association of Elementary School Principals and Secondary School Principals, CCSSO, and then a lot of North Dakota-based entities as well. But was able to get the U.S. Department of Labor to approve the occupation of a K-12 principal, similar to how they approved teacher back when I was in Tennessee. So with their approval, now any state can take advantage of this. And so, Virginia Department of Ed is working on this right now. We have districts in Texas that are working on this. So it's really exciting to see. And kudos again to the Wallace Foundation, where we've had several conversations and the chance to present on this work to their members as well. So I'm really excited. Hopefully by the time this recording is released, we will actually be putting out a joint playbook with North Dakota. That will be a free resource if anyone's interested in developing their own registered apprenticeship for principals. So really, really excited about that. The thing that I would just say regarding the diverse leadership, diversity, I've had a huge growth in my capacity of understanding diversity better. I am somebody that taught in Baltimore, principal in Detroit, and live in New York City. And so when I worked in Tennessee, that exposed me to rural environments. That was new to me. But in North Dakota, a lot of Native American populations. And so what I would say is in any quality, grow your own program for teachers, principals, registered apprenticeship programs. If you are truly being intentional about recruiting from the local community, that will lead to a more diverse population. And so that's where it's at, is we got to, offer opportunities and remove financial barriers for those in our own backyard. And that's where we'll start to see, the teacher workforce and school leader workforce more mirror the current student demographics. Because our current students are our future teachers in the first place. So we just got to remove those barriers, financial barriers for individuals to achieve their dreams.
Thanks, David. And you're mentioning the partnership with North Dakota to release that report. Viewers will make sure to include all resources related to the webinar when we release it, including a number of the state examples that David has shared and others, to make sure that you get a holistic picture of what's happening across the country in this area. So I wanted to ask you, David, just a little bit about even for some of these efforts that are more nascent, what have you seen as the impact of the grow your own efforts thus far? How are states measuring that impact and the success of the initiatives? What metrics are they using to do so or planning to use?
Yeah, so I think, some of the things we're already seeing, more of leading indicators, and, we'll see lagging indicators over time, but we're seeing growth in enrollment in schools of education. That's huge, right? And so the first program ever at Austin Peay State University, which is in Clarksville, Tennessee, just north of Nashville, they have a wait list to get into their teacher education program. So this false narrative that nobody wants to be a teacher, we're disproving it in all these different states, which is really, really exciting to see and should be very encouraging to governors about the return on investment that they're getting. We're also seeing an increase in retention because, when in a lot of states, traditional student teaching is only 15 weeks, so like one semester. And in a registered apprenticeship, it's minimum 1 year. And so that more time under a mentor teacher who is the teacher of record is going to better prepare you to take over a classroom of your own one day. So these graduating apprentices are better prepared. And we're talking like 89 to 91% retention rate based on early programs. I want to be very clear about that. And I look forward to other evaluation and data in the future. But, if you look at teacher residency programs, they tend to have longer retention rates. And so apprenticeship just allows these programs to expand. And ideally, now if you have no debt, and I want to be clear, registered apprenticeship in and of itself doesn't mean it's free to become a teacher. But in those 20 states we work in, it is free. It's possible to be free. And that's where I think that's really exciting to see. And one of the reasons it's free, and this should be encouraging, for governors to look into if they're still at beginning phases or whatever their current state is we're seeing by running competitive grants, a decrease in the cost that it takes to become a teacher. So when we run these competitive grants for states to help them, they're getting multiple universities in their state to compete for the contract with the state. And so therefore, they're better leveraging Pell grants. They're better leveraging Teach grant. They're saying, wait, why am I charging football tickets or access to the gym for an online student? So they're looking at fees. They're exploring giving credit for prior learning or giving credit for experience learned on the job during the apprenticeship. So that's exciting too, to see governors getting more return on investment by lower costs. We've been able to get the cost of a degree down to $10,000 on average in, again, every state we've worked in. So that's encouraging to see. And I think I want to be very clear. The most important indicator that this is the work doesn't matter if we don't accomplish this, and that's an increase in student achievement over time. If every child gets the teacher not only they need but deserve, then we should see an increase in student achievement over time. The jury's out on that. I will not be accused of being a snake oil salesman, but the initial indicators of increase in enrollment, wait lists, increase in retention, this is all very encouraging. And so, but we'll have to see the long-term results, but we're headed in the right direction thus far.
Yeah, that's really helpful. The leading indicators being there around enrollment, around retention, and what we know about retention of high quality educators typically leads to an impact on students. So good to make sure we know where we are on some of the evidence. I know a discussion that came up when you joined us in October for a convening of advisors in Milwaukee was around school staff well-being, doing a lot of work across the country on student well-being. Wanted to hear sort of in the network you're working with, the 20 and the 39, sort of how staff well-being comes up as you're sort of growing these educators and bringing them into the profession.
Yeah, so I'll actually reiterate one point I made in the previous question. That more time under the mentor teacher, that is significant. When you're like I always say, feel free to laugh. And you've probably heard me say that one too many times, Seth. So I apologize that I'm a broken record. But our goal is to eliminate the concept of a first year teacher. And so talk about well-being equated to self-esteem or confidence when you walk into the classroom. And especially if you've been a para professional for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, then you go through a teacher prep program. You're ready. Like you're good, or like you're going to be more ready than I was when I went into the classroom. And so I think that can help with well-being. I think also when we design these competitive grants that I mentioned earlier, we include points for wraparound supports. So as you're going through your training, because look, you might be a parent of 3 students and you're taking courses at night. Who knows what it may be? How is the university, how is the district ensuring your mental and emotional well-being while having this workload? And what are the supports that are needed? Do you need actual academic support? There's a There's a reason there was a game show where he's smarter than a fifth grader. If I was to take the praxis test right now, or whatever your licensure assessment is, I don't know if I'd pass it, Seth. It's been a while. I'm a little rusty on my English, and I was an English teacher. And so, making sure folks have access to tutoring and supports like that. With a registered apprenticeship, one really nice benefit is there's some financial support that can also play into this beyond the tuition and books and fees. And that is, we have, examples of individuals getting gas cards, getting their car repaired because it broke down on the way to go to their courses. Childcare stipends, speaking of, that example of somebody who has 3 kids, like being able, that's huge. So talk about, well-being in that way. When you have no debt, that can actually take away a lot of stress and help with your well-being. But the final thing I want to say is the benefit for that mentor teacher. Unfortunately, teaching can be very isolating. Sometimes we go into our classroom, we close the door, and we don't see an adult again until the bell rings at the end of the day. And so having an extra set of hands in your classroom with an apprentice, there's a mutually beneficial relationship there, where it's really cool to see these mentors, and they're getting stipends for this work often, but I think that's fun to see when there's an extra body in there and you can share that experience, and you're growing by not just teaching students but also teaching your apprentice. That can also have the well-being for that mentor, I think, plays into this too, and that's nice to see.
Thanks, David. Really helpful. So really thinking about better preparation, wraparound supports, financial supports, and that opportunity for collaboration, the working conditions that really can help
Mm.
contribute to the well-being of educators. Well, we always like to end on a particularly optimistic note. So what are you most excited about in your work? What should we be keeping an eye out for with the National Center and some of your work?
Yeah, well, every day I kind of get to be like Oprah. It's not look under your car, look under your seat, you get a car, but it's more like you get to be a teacher. You get to be a teacher. That's pretty awesome, to get to do this work, and and tied to my parents' story from earlier. And so that's really exciting. Just yesterday, actually, there was a newspaper article about the first graduating class of teacher apprenticeships from the state of Florida. Graduate from University of Florida, and there's a gentleman quoted in there who was a glass blower who went back, and now he's a kindergarten teacher, and he could not be more excited, more prepared. That, like, there are people I will never meet who are getting to achieve their dream. That gives me joy. That brings me joy. I think what's also exciting is, as governors think about teacher shortages and governor policy advisors, a lot of programs started with 1 or 2 year pathways because of how acute the shortages are. So programs for folks who already have a bachelor's, so maybe a 1 year master's or 1 year post-bac licensure program, or 2 year programs for individuals who already have an associate's. Now we're seeing, for those states that have started with those, they're expanding it into 4 year programs or to youth apprenticeship programs. And on the other end, as we talked earlier, principal apprenticeship programs. That's exciting. We're proving that it is possible in this country to become a teacher for free and get paid to do so. And if we truly achieve that in all 50 states, then we will achieve our other dream of making sure every child has not only the teacher they need, but deserve. That's why I get up every morning, and, to go from 7 states to 39 in the network, to see the community, to hear about states say about the conversations they had in between our network meetings, learning from one another. I'm very blessed. And to be honest with you, on a selfish thing, I don't have to deal with teacher evaluations or teacher licensure or any of that. I get to do one thing. I am a one-trick pony. So that's my Oprah focus. And maybe one day we'll be able to give away cars with that degree. Who knows? But for now, life ain't bad. Very blessed. And thanks to partners like NGA, who just do incredible work to spread messages from that are promising practices across the country. Really appreciate that.
Well, thanks, David. And you can tell the joy, the passion you bring to the work. And so thanks for your continued leadership and the great conversation. And we really appreciate you sharing your expertise, your insight with all of the viewers today. And again, viewers, please note we'll attach all those reports and resources when we release it on the NGA website. So thanks again, David. And until next time, thanks to all of you for tuning in and have a great day.